There's a place He comes to me. Though I'm blind, He helps me see. Though I see dimly in this place, one day I'll see Him face to face.
This is Kurt Kaikkonen, pastor of Calvary Chapel, Waterford, at your neighborhood church. Today on Face to Face, we'll be in the book of Matthew. So grab your Bibles and let's get started. If you want to hear this complete message in its entirety, go to yourneighborhoodchurch.com, where you can download Your Neighborhood Church app at the App Store.
And the greatest of all the outcasts here were the lepers, because they were not only outcasts from just the Pharisees, but they were the outcasts of all of Jewish society, because they were considered to be the outcasts of God. And although leprosy, it could be a whole different series of skin conditions, what the Bible calls leprosy is mostly what we know as Hansen's disease. And there's never been a cure for Hansen's disease, but today that disease, it can be arrested so that it doesn't spread, and it's by the use of antibiotics. But leprosy is never cured. The last known leper colony in the United States was closed in 1969, and that was the Kalaupapa colony on the island of Molokai in Hawaii. And just like our country had leper colonies, the Jews had laws regarding where lepers could live, and they were all given in the Mosaic Law. Lepers, they had to dwell outside the camp or outside the city walls. And if a leper was to approach a person, they would always have to come from downwind because of the stench. And when the leper came to be about 150 feet away from a person, the leper was required to shout, "Unclean, unclean." So the leper, he would never come in contact with anyone else. And you have to realize that at the beginning of leprosy, it didn't really look so bad. But leprosy, it's a progressive disease. And over time, that leper would become grossly disfigured with large boils and tumors, where parts of their body would literally be rotting and falling off. But the first thing that leprosy does to a person is that it attacks the nervous system. It attacks your nerve trunks so that you lose feeling. And so you lose your feelings in your hands and you lose your feelings in your feet. And so you wouldn't even know that you were going around and injuring yourselves. And so things like your hands and your feet, they would become infected and you never even know it. And then your muscles, they'd start to waste away. And then your tendons, they would begin to contract, and your hands would begin to look like claws. And this is the reason that leprosy in the Bible has always been used to represent the effect of sin in one's life. Because what leprosy does to the body is what sin does to the inner person. Leprosy is equivalent to what sin does to the soul. Because sin, in the same way as leprosy, it desensitizes a person to the destruction that the sin is doing to them, where they can't see the effects of their sin. They can't feel the effects of their sin. And their inner man is rotting away and becoming more corrupt. And what you need to know is that in Israel, leprosy, it wasn't diagnosed by doctors. It was diagnosed by the priests. And when they would declare somebody to be unclean, which means leprous, that person was never able to see their family again. And it didn't matter if it was a little child or a young mother or a father or a widow. It didn't matter if it was your parents or your grandparents. That person never again would ever feel the touch of the ones that they loved. And they would never be able to touch anyone that they loved. That person was cut off immediately. For the sake of all, they had to live outside of society. Because just like sin, leprosy is very contagious. And so often the lepers, what they would do is they would live outside the city, outside the walls, in the garbage dumps. And they would live off the things that the people would throw away. They were considered to be the walking dead. And for all practical purposes to their families, they were considered to be dead, although they were still alive. And the minimum distance that a leper could be away from another human being was 6 feet. And that would be after giving all the warnings. They could only come within 6 feet of a person. And up until this time in Israel's history, there had only been 3 persons ever cleansed from leprosy. Leprosy is never called healed. It's always called cleansed. And the first person was Moses, and that was when God had revealed his power to Moses. God had Moses put his hand into his cloak and then to pull it out again. And it was leprous. It was white as snow. And then God told Moses to put it back again. And then when he pulled it out, it was restored. And the second person cleansed from leprosy was Miriam, Moses' sister, who rebelled against her little brother when they were in the wilderness. And so God gave her leprosy to teach her not to rebel. And after she repented and lived a few days outside of the camp, she was cleansed and allowed to come back in. In the third case of leprosy, for a person being cleansed, that would have been Naaman the Syrian, and he was a commander in the Syrian army. And he wasn't a Jew, he was a Gentile. And he came to faith because of a little Jewish servant girl who told him about a real prophet, the true prophet of the real God, and that he would be able to heal him of his leprosy. And so Naaman, he believed to the point where he actually traveled from Syria all the way to Israel to see this prophet. And God, he honored his faith and he healed him. And so now we have Jesus here, and he's coming down off the mountain, and he's greeted by this walking dead man, and he's full of leprosy. So this man, he has no hope in the world of his life ever being changed or ever being restored. But he's heard about Jesus healing people. And it may be possible that he may have just heard that Sermon on the Mount, maybe from a distance. But as he approaches Jesus, he breaks every Jewish protocol as he comes closer, and he worships him. And this leper, he already believes that Jesus is God because he calls Jesus Lord. And the word that he's using for Lord here is the Greek word kurios, which is the Greek translation of Yahweh. So this leper, he already believes that Jesus can heal him. His only question here is Jesus willing to heal me? Because the rabbis during this time, they hated lepers. Because the rabbis, they not only thought of leprosy as a comparison to sin, they believed that the lepers, that they were under a special type of judgment from God because of their sin. And that lepers, they didn't deserve mercy and they didn't deserve pity. And some of the rabbis, they even bragged about how badly they treated lepers. They'd brag about throwing stones at them. And this leper, he knows all this. And so he's not sure that Jesus is going to receive him at all. So this leper's question isn't, can he heal me? But it's, is Jesus willing to heal me? And in the Mosaic law, it was prohibited for anyone to touch a leper, because if you touched a leper, it would make you unclean. And Jesus, he knows that he could have healed that leper without touching him. Because we see Jesus do this later when we get to like Luke 17, where he heals like 10 lepers without touching them. And we know that when Elisha, when he healed Naaman the Syrian, he didn't touch him. And Moses, he didn't touch even Miriam when she was healed. So Jesus, he didn't have to touch him, but Jesus decided to touch him. And then you have to realize that this man wasn't dirty. This man was filthy dirty, and he smelled like something dead. But when Jesus touched him, it didn't make Jesus unclean. and made the leper clean. And then you have to realize that this is probably the first physical contact that this man has had with another human being in years. And it shows us the way that Jesus, how he loves this man and how he pities him and how he shows him mercy. And in the same way, Jesus pities each of us because he sees the leprosy in our souls where the sin has been destroying us for years, where we may not even know that we were being destroyed. But there's some of us, we know what we've done, what kind of sins we've committed, where when we think about them, we have a hard time even looking ourselves in the eyes. And then sometimes we can wonder, is Jesus willing to make me clean and to show me mercy? But Jesus, through this, he shows us through this demonstration by cleansing this leper that he's willing to cleanse us too, no matter what we've done. We could even be a walking dead man. We could be all consumed in our sin. But Jesus, that he is willing to make us clean. And all you have to do is what this poor leper did. You have to come and worship him. You have to come and confess Jesus as Lord, that he's God, he's Yahweh. And then you have to ask him to cleanse you. But you might not think your sins are so bad, but like leprosy, sin is a progressive disease, and you wouldn't be feeling how sin is destroying your life anymore. Where there's parts of you now that may be numb in areas where you used to be sensitive, but now those areas, they're falling off. And a lot of times we can't see it in ourselves, but we often can see it in other people, because we can usually see it like in drug addicts who can't for themselves see it happening in their lives, but we can see where their addictions have taken them with their years of abuse. And you can maybe see it in some alcoholics. You can see it in maybe the mentally ill people that are living homeless, that are walking streets, and they're just sitting around talking to themselves. Whatever sin that brought them to that point, and I'm not trying to judge people. I would be with them. Just give me 2 weeks without walking with the Lord, and I'd sit there like a crazy man walking the streets. But these things, these sins, they're spiritual leprosy, and Jesus can make them clean too. And it's never a question if Jesus, if he's willing, because Jesus, he's always willing, because that's what he came here to do. That's why Jesus came into the world. It's really a question if a person is willing to come to Jesus. But for most of us, we would have to be like this leprous man to come to Jesus, where we have no other hope after trying everything else. And so now Jesus, he sends him away, and he tells him not to tell anyone. He says, but go show yourself to the priest at the temple, and then to offer the appropriate offering that Moses commanded in the day of your cleansing. So now he goes off to the temple. But here is where you need to realize this is the first leper that Jesus ever cleansed.
You've been listening to Face to Face. Face to Face on this radio station has been provided by Your Neighborhood Church. If you want to help support Face to Face and put this program on other stations just like yours, you can contact us at yourneighborhoodchurch.com or write Your Neighborhood Church, P.O. Box 500, Romeo, Michigan 48065.
There's a place he comes to me. Though I'm blind, he helps me see. Though I see dimly in this place, one day I'll see him face to face.
Tune in again tomorrow at this same time as we continue to go through the Bible.